Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we're going to be diving into a tier list for the v0.4.2 patch. It's actually the v0.4. No, yeah, 0.4 patch with the Shinbi release, but they've done some hot fixes, so that's where we're at right now. So the Shinbi release patch, and yeah, I've had some time to test out some of the changes, some of the new, the new hero, the new balance, and yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. So, for the sake of structure, I've actually added an A+ tier, and this is going to allow me to pull some of the A tier away because the balance in this game is actually really good, and I ended up stacking the A tier a lot, and it's still going to look that way, but this should separate it quite a bit. Let's go ahead and get something out of the way. I just want to. Fang Mao's terrible. I think he is very, very close to useless. I have to be not so literal. The irony is I think that like his best role for like pubs and like solo queues, like yeah, probably jungle, but competitively speaking, his best role is like mid, and that's just like as like an anti-mage, kind of like put some pressure, but he just doesn't scale. He's not very strong, and it's all relative, right? So he's not the most useless thing in the world. Literally, there's just always someone better at any place that you could put him, that that can do the job better. Yeah. Another one very surprising to me, and I'm very, very happy to say this, Crunch. I think Crunch is encroaching S tier right now, but is actually A+ tier. The changes to Crunch are actually nice. His E just got flat damage buffs. His Q got some base damage nerfs, but got 20% additional physical scaling. So as you're playing the entire early game, going toward your Mutilator, which everybody should be building Mutilator on Crunch, you're just stronger. You are just stronger the entire time because you have an additional 20% power scaling that you didn't have before, and it actually makes a pretty huge difference. He feels very strong to me right now. So Crunch is feeling pretty solid, which is actually pretty awesome, and is contending like high tier jungle roles and probably offlane roles as well. I say probably, I view the game from a jungle perspective. Sorry. He's contending offlane and jungle very, very well, and yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Let's go ahead and dump on the S tier a little bit. This is a little bit predictive, but I'm still thinking that Rampage, even with the nerfs, is the best jungler in the game. It's probably by the tiniest of margin over, say, someone like Crunch or other A+ junglers that I might put on the list. And the reason why is just because he does do damage, although it got nerfed, but he's also tanky. He's got fast clear. He's just strong, but it's so close to me pulling him down like this. It really, really is. For now, I feel still comfortable just saying like, hey, you know what? I think he's the best jungler by a small margin. So if you can give me that, where you understand that the line, instead of being, horizontally from here to here between their strength, is just slightly vertical, then we're on the same page. And I think I want to go on ahead and throw up another S tier pick, which is going to be Richter. Richter is just insane, man. He just is, even if I say I don't think he's the best support in the game, but like solely, he's the best support that has the biggest team fight threat, or some of the biggest team fight threat, and is incredibly strong on that front. Really, really strong CC, and even with the nerfs to Richter, like his mana cost on his hook, very, very strong, and hard to deal with. Yeah, so there's that. Let's talk about someone that actually took quite a hit. I think Narbash actually got nerfed quite a bit. So it doesn't make him bad, but I do think he's fitting very middle of the pack, kind of in line. I don't know if this is good or bad. He may need some buffs now. He may be fine. It's hard for me to tell. I don't really play him. It's just the way that I felt him being played, and the way I've talked with my teammates. So he feels like he's definitely not in that super strong position anymore. But I think he's doing pretty all right. Pretty all right. And Sevarog, I'm having a hard time with Sevarog. He feels maybe like lower A tier, middle A tier, high B tier. I'm not exactly sure. I think I feel most comfortable putting him A tier because he is still a tank and he scales really, really well. But I do think that some of the nerfs kind of pulled him down a little bit. So I feel a little bit comfortable putting him A tier. I don't think it's the highest point of A tier. But I think that he can kind of exist in there a bit. For C tier, I'm going to go ahead and throw in Bellica. Bellica, in my opinion, she's not bad. she's an okay mid and she's an okay support. But the presence that you're going to get from other supports and the team fight that you're going to get from other supports is almost always better. And her as a mid, she's just single target focused, where a lot of the mid like play and a lot of the mid like ultimates and kits are very team fight focused, and that's what you kind of tend to want. So she's really not that bad. She's actually really aggressive and has some oppressive like combo, like an oppressive combo that can almost one-shot somebody. But she's just, relatively speaking, not as strong as some of the other supports and not as strong as some of the mid lane mages, in my opinion. Speaking of mid lane mages, I have a pretty I think that this is correct, but my stance on some of the mages are as follows. I think that Gideon, Gadget, Faye, those are like the team fighters, right? They have setup, area denial, combo potential. Like they don't do the exact same thing, but they do like relatively team fight focused AoE kind of thing, and they're all very good. These are the mages you want on your team for winning team fights out of the mid lane. They're very strong, and I'm not saying like always, but they are very strong. Now let's go on ahead and get the elephant out of the room. Talk about the elephant in the room. Get the elephant out of the room. Whatever. Countess. I still think Countess is S tier. She just has so much snowball potential, whether it's competitive or in solo queue. She's incredibly strong, and it's just something you don't really want to ignore because she's so strong. She can be incredibly oppressive. Steel. I want to talk about Steel for a second. The thing with Steel is that he did get nerfed and I bumped him down, but I'm not actually sure that that's the case. I think Steel is S tier. And the reason why is he is just so incredibly strong when it comes to being in a team fight. There's no denying it. He puts crazy pressure, has an insanely strong ultimate. And the funny thing is that I think that his position in the game is actually pulling more and more away from off lane and more into jungle and support. So I don't really think that Steel is the best offlaner anymore, and probably we'll see, especially competitively, we'll see a little less play in the offlane and more play in the jungle and in support. But it doesn't matter. He's so strong, you want him on a team. Jungling him, that's fine. And playing him support, that's fine. He's very good at it. It's not like something you can do. He's good at it. So Steel is very strong. Definitely not someone that you want to give up lightly in a competitive setting, and is definitely something you should consider playing in your ladder matches. IMO. All right, let's touch on a couple of the bruisers. Well, the bruisers. I still do think I'm going to kind of put them like in order next to their other counterparts. I think Grux and Chimera are both still A+. The cool thing about Chimera is he's just a very consistent jungler. I think in a competitive setting, Chimera might actually be a little bit worse than Crunch, just for the sake of drafting. Now, this is not really applicable for most people just playing the game in solo queue and stuff, but for the sake of drafting, you could pick Crunch and have him as an option that's more flexible, because you could put him in the offlane or in the jungle, where Chimera, you can't really do that. So I actually think Chimera is losing a little bit of stock, and I might even put him high A. I'm going to do it for now. If I end up shifting him back up, I'll explain why in a second as the rest of the list develops. But I actually think that this might be a little bit more accurate, just because Crunch got some buffs and he's more versatile, right? You can put him in more places, or flexible, I think is the word I want to use. And then Grux is Grux, man. He hasn't been hit in a while. He's very strong. He's a really good he's flexible, right? You can offlane him, you can jungle him. Very strong character. Crazy team fight presence, and I don't want to ignore that. All right, let's spitfire through the AD carries really quickly. I think the best AD carry is Drongo, and it gets really close after that. I think the best AD carry is Drongo, and they're so close, but I'm not going to stack them. I think I'm probably going to put Sparrow, Murdoch in A tier, and I want to put Revenant either right below them or high in the B tier, just to differentiate them a little bit. And I don't even think it's that big of a discrepancy. I just think Drongo stands out a little bit with his silence grenade, and kind of just the fact that he just has a really like safe kit for a carry. It's really nice. Now the buckshot is like, I'm starting to put more respect on Murdoch because he can get kills cross map and clean up things, but the buckshot's great self-peel tool, and then Sparrow's like crazy end game. I actually think that Revenant might be the weakest of the carries now, and he's still good, so I'm pretty comfortable putting him like this. In my last tier list, I usually try not to refer back to my last tier list. It was right after they made some of the Revenant changes, and I was actually wrong. I thought that those Revenant changes weren't going to be a big change to him, and it was. I had Revenant sitting in S tier, and he even then pulled down quite a bit. He's just good. I think he's good, but you have to pick him for a certain reason. All right, let's touch on Muriel, because she got buffed. Very strong. She might be an S tier support. She's incredibly strong right now. Really strong team fight presence, lots and lots of shields. What more is there to say? She's incredibly strong in my opinion. Decker is the other support that kind of shines through right now. It's always been Decker, Richter are like the main two supports. If you're not well, originally it was when Steel was much more of an offlaner, but now she's just a very consistent. You can definitely pick her and have a really good presence. Really annoying against team comps that are grounded a little bit. Like if you have people that have to run a lot and there's not a lot of like vertical mobility or jumps and leaps and things, then Decker's really annoying. Mainly Grux. Really annoying to play Grux into Decker. And again, I told y'all the A tier is still going to be stacked, but at least I can pull some of these things away a little bit. Kallari. Kallari is like somewhere in here. I think Kallari is better to have on a team than a Belica, maybe. Actually, that might not even be true. I think Kallari is like chilling in the C tier. The nerfs to Kallari's early game hinder what Kallari wants to do in order to have value. Like you want to snowball a game as Kallari so that way you can like hard take over the match and win, but it's harder to do that now. And that doesn't just mean like, oh, it's harder to do it, but you need to be good at her to do it. That's true. And hear me out, in solo queue you absolutely can still do it. It's possible, it's just much harder, and when it's much harder that means it's much more of a risk. So if it's much more of a risk to play Kallari in the jungle, then it may not be worth it to play it. But you can still absolutely pop off in this character. Do not get me wrong. I'm just not a huge fan of her right now, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. Howitzer, which I kind of forgot to put whenever I was doing mages, is just consistent A tier. I think he's really strong. I don't think there's anything too... Like he's more single target, a lot like Belica. So I think they tend to sit lower naturally from the other mages because they're not team fight focused. Now, the only reason Countess is different than that is because she absolutely deletes everything when she does her role, right? So yeah, Countess is different than that. But these are like team fight setup mages, and these are like single target mages, but he's actually pretty good. And he can flex in the off lane a little bit because he's got a pretty decently safe pick. So can Gadget, like they can flex in the off lane a little bit if you have a tank somewhere else on the team in a team comp. But yeah, Howie is consistently strong. And that leads us to Shinbi, which honestly, man, I'm going to predictively say that she might be S tier, but I'm not putting her there. I'm putting her in a solid A+ tier. She's really strong. In my personal opinion, I don't really see her much of a mid laner. I see her as an off laner and a jungler. She has great clear. She's kind of a farming jungle. You just want to like rush farm and get to some of your strength, get to your wild hunt, and then try to impact fights with your ultimate and like impact ganks with your ultimate. You can gank a little bit with her, and as an offlaner I think she's just great to have on a team. So I think she's really good. And this is kind of what I'm thinking, something like this. Honestly, I'm going to make a couple of changes just for the sake of illustration, and it would be like, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not going to. I kind of want to do something like this, but I feel like the Sev dropping that low is a little disingenuous, so I think I'm going to leave him. And the Revenant, I just don't want to piss anybody off. I don't think he's so much worse than the other carries that I want to do something like that. It just feels a little weird to leave Narbash in the B tier alone, but in my opinion, Narbash definitely stands above Belica as a support, but it can't even hold a flame to, say, Decker Muriel right now. And so I think Narbash actually gets to chill in the B tier by himself. And it hurts me to put Chimera low because I'm always just a big advocate for Chimera, but I actually think with the crunch changes, he might be a better jungler than Chimera right now. So that's what I'm thinking. Friends, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. It's always subjective, and the balance in this game is good, man. Like, look at how top heavy this balance is, at least from my perception, sorry. And yeah, they do a pretty good job with it. I'm really liking the patch. I think it's pretty solid. So drop a like in the video, subscribe for future Predecessor content. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, be sure to kind of one another, tell someone you love them, and I'll see you in the next video.